Maya stepped out of her sleek black car and paused for a moment to breathe in the warm summer air. The sky was clear, and the sunlight danced on the neatly trimmed grass of the country club's lawn. She wore a light blue dress that fell just below her knees and simple flats that clicked softly on the paving stones. In her hand, she held a small bouquet of her father's favorite sunflowers. Her heart fluttered as she looked up at the tall, white marquee where her father's name was spelled out in gold letters above the entrance. It was a celebration for his 60th birthday, and she had spent weeks planning a special gift. Even so, Maya felt a tug of nervousness in her stomach. She walked toward the marquee with steady steps, but as she drew near, she saw that someone had directed her to a table set apart from the rest. It sat under a small tree at the edge of the lawn. A waiter in a crisp white shirt and black vest led her there and placed the sunflowers on the table. Maya's cheeks warmed. She could see through the marquee's open sidewalls that everyone else was seated in neat rows under a large white tent. Conversation and laughter floated through. The air glasses tinkled, and the rich scent of grilled vegetables and roast beef drifted out. The whole scene looked joyful, as if everyone were part of one big happy family. Yet Maya felt like an outsider. She sat down slowly and smoothed the folds of her dress over her lap. She glanced at the empty chair next to her and then at the other tables where the guests chatted in small groups. The people she had known for years were clustered together. Neighbors waved at one another. Family friends raised their glasses in toasts. But she was alone, on a small wooden table, simply marked with her name. It was not the way she had imagined her father's birthday celebration would begin. Maya remembered as a little girl how her father had always been proud of her. At school events, he sat in the front row cheering the loudest. At her graduation, he hugged her so tightly that she thought he might never let go. He had said then, "You are my bright star." Over the years, she had grown into a confident young woman, earning top marks in college and winning awards at her job, but today she realized something had changed. A sudden breeze rattled the leaves above her. She brushed her hair back from her face and looked out at the crowd again. Her father, Mr. Thompson, stood near the main table, shaking hands and laughing kindly with his old business partners. He was tall, with broad shoulders and a silvering beard that gave him a distinguished look. When his eyes met hers for a moment, he gave a small apologetic smile, then turned away. Maya wondered how he could celebrate so happily while she sat. To the side, she thought about the move she had made 6 months ago. Instead of taking on a promotion at her father's company, she had chosen to start her own consultancy firm. It was a risk, but one she felt she had to take. She worked late nights, building her client base and learning to trust her own judgment. When she told her father, he had looked proud in one instant and disappointed the next. She heard the quiet way he asked, "Are you sure?" and saw the tension in his eyes. Over time, she knew some of his oldest friends felt her choice was a slap against tradition. Perhaps they had urged him to show her the door. A soft knock on the table caught her attention. The waiter leaned over. "Can I bring you anything, Miss Thompson?" he asked politely. Maya shook her head. "No, thank you," she said, her voice steady. The waiter gave a respectful bow and walked away. Maya picked up her water glass, sipping slowly as she watched a group of older men glance her way. Of them, a man in a dark suit with a receding hairline whispered something to the woman beside him. The woman pursed her lips and looked over again. Maya felt their eyes like tiny pricks on her skin. She lowered her gaze to the dais where her father stood. She wondered if she should move over to the main tent. Would anyone notice, or would someone rush to stop her? Before she could decide, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She slipped it out and saw a message from her assistant. "Helicopter is on its way." Maya closed her eyes. The plan she had made felt daring, but she hoped it would work. She took a deep breath and rose from her chair. The wooden seat felt flimsy under her as she walked past her bouquet, leaving it behind on the table. She stepped onto the grass, trying not to stumble on the gentle slope leading to the larger tent. The guests' voices rose and then fell as a distant sound reached them. It was soft at first, like a distant drumbeat, then grew louder and more insistent. Maya held her breath and looked up. Out of the blue sky came the thrum of helicopter. blades cutting the air. The chatter under the marquee slowed to a hush. Maya walked toward the edge of the lawn, where a small dirt clearing lay beside the club's clubhouse. The buzz of the helicopter grew louder, and dust began to swirl around its landing skids. She could feel the vibration through her shoes. As the helicopter descended, dust and small leaves swirled in a little whirlwind around it. Maya shaded her eyes and watched the white craft touch down gently. The rotor blades still spun, stirring up a faint breeze that rustled the guests' hair and the tense white canvas. Everyone turned to watch. Some gasped. Others whispered excitedly. Maya's heart pounded as the pilot opened the door. She stepped forward into the circle of dust, her dress brushing the tall grass. When the helicopter door swung fully open, Maya recognized the pilot as the one she had trained with just last week. He gave her a friendly nod. She lifted her chin and walked up the short stairway to the cabin. The rotor wash blew her hair around like a halo. Once she was level with the door, she paused and looked back at the gathering crowd. Silence hung in the air. Then she stepped out onto the grass, standing tall in the open space between the helicopter and the crowd. The dusty wind settled, and the helicopter's engines whirred down to a gentle hum. Maya glanced at her dress, smoothed a stray curl from her cheek, and then walked toward her father's table. As she approached, her father's hand froze in midair. He saw her coming and felt his breath catch. Guests shifted in their seats. Leaning forward to get a better view, some took out their phones to record what was happening. Maya walked steadily, carrying no gifts, because she knew this moment was her gift. Her decision to arrive by helicopter was more than showy. It was her way of saying that she could soar on her own. With every step, dust fell from the spinning blades behind her, and the bright afternoon sun made her dress glow. When she reached the head of the main table, Maya stopped. Her father, still seated, stared at her in disbelief. Her mother covered her mouth with her hand. Business partners exchanged astonished looks. For a moment, no one spoke. Then a slow clap began from the far end of the table. Others joined in. Maya offered her father a small, proud smile. He stood, brushing dust from his expensive suit, eyes moist. At that moment, Maya knew she had shifted something deep in his heart, and in everyone else's. The buzz of the helicopter faded into the background as the sound of applause and new voices filled the air. The party that had once isolated her now celebrated her in the brightest way possible. Maya stood at the edge of the tent and let her mind drift back to her first day at college. She remembered walking through the wide stone archway, her suitcase in one hand and a notebook in the other. She felt a mixture of excitement and fear. Each building towered above her like a silent guardian, full of quiet halls and busy classrooms. She had chosen business studies because she loved numbers and ideas. She loved how one small choice could turn into something big. At every turn, she learned new things: how to read reports, how to speak in front of a crowd, and how to solve problems by working with others. Her grades soared, and soon she was on the dean's list. She felt proud whenever she thought of how far she had come. After graduation, Maya returned home for summer break. Her father hugged her tight and beamed with pride. He told everyone about her grades, showing them pictures of her hooded gown and her bright smile. Maya thought the praise would never end. Then came a job offer from her father's company, a chance to climb the ladder of the family business. It was a safe choice, one that would make her father happy and keep his friends impressed. Yet Maya felt a pull elsewhere. She sensed a spark inside that whispered she wanted more. She wanted to make decisions on her own, to build something of her own design. She wanted to test her wings. So Maya took a deep breath and told her father she planned to start her own consultancy firm. She would help small businesses grow, teaching them how to manage money and how to reach more customers. She saw possibilities in dusty shops and local cafes. She believed she could make a difference. Her father listened quietly. His proud smile faltered. He leaned back in his chair and folded his arms. Finally, he asked, "Are you sure this is what do you want?" He sounded calm, but Maya saw his eyes filled with worry. She nodded, her heart racing. She felt guilty, yet she felt alive. In the weeks that followed, Some of her father's old friends called him. They spoke in low voices in the study, their words sharp and quick. Maya heard him sigh as he walked past her room. Once, she paused outside the study door and heard him say, "Starting on your own is risky.
Why not?
Stay with the family business." His words stung, but she held on to her choice. She worked late that night, planning her new company's name, her logo, and the first brochures. The glow of her computer screen kept her company as she imagined meeting clients in bright conference rooms, shaking hands and making deals. Months later, Maya's consultancy was up and running. She landed her first client by sending a simple email and offering a free first meeting. A cozy bakery down the street agreed. She spent an afternoon in their oven-warmed kitchen, jotting notes as the baker explained her challenges. At the end of the day, she gave the baker a plan for new bread flavors and a few simple ads for local newspapers. The next week, business picked up. Maya felt a rush of joy. She called her father to share the news, but he was busy, said he would call back later. That call never came. Maya swallowed her worry and pressed on. She reminded herself that building something new often meant stepping into the unknown alone. Now, as she waited by the tent at the party, she recalled those quiet nights of planning. She remembered the first time she closed her consultancy deal, small but real victory. She felt that same spark of pride, but it was tinged with sadness. She had imagined her father cheering her on, just as he had cheered at her graduation. Instead, he sat at the main table, talking and laughing with business partners who had shown little interest in her new path. Some of them had even suggested to him that she should follow tradition. Maya could almost see their raised eyebrows when she walked past them in the halls of his office. She watched the man in the dark suit again. He was one of her father's oldest partners. Today he laughed at a story a younger man told. But Maya remembered how that partner frowned when he heard about her consultancy. She remembered overhearing him say that she should stay in her lane. Her cheeks warmed at the memory. She pressed her fingers against her temples, as if trying to push away that sting. She felt a tight knot in her chest. The party music drifted to her ears, light and cheerful, but it sounded distant, like a song playing in a dream. A server approached carrying a silver tray of bite-sized hors d'oeuvres, tiny tarts filled with spinach and cheese, skewers of cherry tomatoes, and mozzarella in small cups of cold soup. The server moved carefully so he would not spill. He stopped near Maya and lifted a tart to her lips. "Would you like to try one, Miss Thompson?" Maya forced a smile and took the tart. She bit gently, tasting the warm cheese and the fresh spinach. The flavor was nice, but she barely noticed. She set the tart on her plate and sipped water. The server continued on, his shoes making soft sounds on the grass. Maya glanced at the main table and saw her father raise a toast. Glasses clinked. Laughter followed. Faces glowed with happiness. She felt a pang of longing. She wanted to be part of that joy. She wanted her father's eyes to shine with pride for her. She wanted the old warmth. Yet there was a pull in her soul telling her she did not need that seat to prove her worth. She had her own seat in life, one she had built with her own hands. Still, the pain of exclusion stung. She closed her eyes and let the sounds wash over her. She heard children laughing as they chased each other around the edge of the tent. She heard her mother's soft voice talking to a friend about a charity event. She imagined herself joining them, laughing along, letting the hurt slip away. But each time, a small voice whispered, "You are not invited." Maya shook her head, trying to silence it. She lifted her chin and straightened her back. She would not let doubt win. A gentle breeze brushed her cheek. She felt it like a soft hand urging her to look forward. She opened her eyes and saw the cluster of guests turning toward the clearing by the clubhouse. She followed their gaze. Her heart answered before her mind did. She heard a low hum at first, hardly louder than a moth's wings. Filling her ears, people turned their heads, their eyes widening. Some stepped aside to see better. Maya felt the ground tremble under her feet, as if it were breathing. Her pulse quickened. She took a small step closer to the edge of the tent, where the grass met the stone path. The hum rose into a rhythmic pulse. It sounded like a heartbeat. Her stomach tightened. She remembered how her father once said that life's greatest changes come with some fear. He had said that when she first learned to ride a bike. She had wobbled and fallen, scraped her knee, but then she rode on her own, faster than ever. Now she stood at another turning point. Her choices had led her here. She could feel everything shrinking down to this one moment. The hum, the stairs, the memory of her own strength. Maya inhaled slowly and let her breath out in a soft sigh. She reached into her pocket and touched the small remote she carried. It would call the helicopter that would carry her around the world for meetings with new clients. She thought of the journeys ahead, soaring above the clouds, visiting towns she had never seen. She thought of the people she would help. She thought of her mission, to show that she could lead, that she could rise without leaning on her father's name. The hum grew louder, the wind picked up, and a swirl of dust lifted in front of her. She felt the moment rip open, revealing a path she alone must walk. The guests around her took a step back as the source of the hum materialized. Shadows danced on the grass as the object descended from the sky. Maya felt her heart hammer her ribs. Yet inside that storm of sound and motion, she felt calm. Held onto that calm like a lifeline. She knew that soon all eyes would be on her, not as the daughter seated away from everyone, but as a person who chose to stand tall in her own light. The party's noise and chatter dimmed in her ears. That remained was the growing pulse of the rotors and her own steady breath, ready to carry her into what came next. ChatGPT said. Dust swirled around Maya's feet as the helicopter blades slowed their spin. The bright white craft stood on the grass, just beyond the edge of the tent. Guests pressed close to the sides of the marquee, their eyes fixed on the landing spot. Maya felt the warm air shift, carrying bits of grass and tiny leaves toward her. She took a steadying breath, tasting the dry dust on her tongue. Her heart raced, but she felt a deep calm beneath the rush. This was her moment. She stepped forward, brushing her hand against the moist grass. As she walked, the hum of the engine faded to a soft whisper. The pilot climbed out and closed the door gently. His dark uniform was crisp, and he gave her a respectful nod. He opened his hand toward the cabin, but Maya shook her head with a small smile. She did not need help climbing down. She reached the short step and climbed out on her own. Her blue dress caught the light, and the bright fabric contrasted with the pale blades of the helicopter. Guests gasped and murmured. Some held out their phones to take photos. Maya stood tall for a moment, letting the scene sink in. Around her, the afternoon sun cast long shadows over the lawn. Air smelled of fresh-cut grass and faint perfume. She smoothed her hair back from her face, ignoring the small flies dancing. In the breeze, she glanced at the bouquet of sunflowers she had left on her small table. They stood bright and golden, untouched. She felt a small pang of regret for leaving them behind, but she knew the real gift was her arrival. She turned and began walking toward the main table. Her steps were sure, each one placing her closer to the spot where her father sat. The guests parted, creating a narrow path. Some clapped softly. Others whispered words of surprise. Maya ignored the voices in her head telling her to be humble or to run back. She held her head high. She had dreamed of this moment, the chance to show her father and his friends that she was not a child to be tucked away. She was a woman with dreams and power. She walked. She remembered the first time she had ridden a bike without training wheels. She was 6, wobbling down the sidewalk, her father's hands hovering near the seat. He had let go at just the right moment, and she had pedaled on her own. She had felt free and strong. Her father cheered, calling her his brave girl. In that memory, she felt the same freedom now, freedom born of facing fear and letting go of doubt. The last few feet to the main table felt louder than the rest. Every footstep seemed to echo. Guests nudged each other, nodding at her. Duh. Man in the dark suit, the one who had whispered she was out of her depth, straightened and watched with curious eyes. A few women who had frowned when they first saw her sat up straighter, their expressions softening. Maya felt their stares, but she kept her focus on her father. When she reached the head of the table, the world slowed. Her father had stopped speaking mid-sentence. He stood, his chair scraping softly. His suit jacket was dark blue and pressed, his white shirt clean. His silver beard caught the light as he turned toward her. His eyes widened, and for a moment, he looked afraid. Then his face softened. She saw love and regret in his gaze. Maya paused an arm's length away. She did not speak at first. The tent was so quiet she could hear her own breath. She looked at her father, at the man who had taught her to dream, who had held her when she cried, who had cheered her at every milestone. Now he stood before her, unsure. She felt a swell of compassion. She reached out and took his hand. "Happy birthday, Dad," she said, her voice clear. It carried over the silence, gentle but firm. She smiled at him and he returned it. Sadness and pride mingled in his eyes. Tears welled up. He blinked them away, but they shone like tiny stars against his cheeks. Guests began to clap, quiet at first, then louder. Some rose from their seats, giving her fresh applause. A few whistled. Maya's mother stood and joined in, waving her handkerchief. Her business partners lifted their glasses in salute. The man in the dark suit stood and nodded respectfully. Maya felt her heart bloom with warmth. She squeezed her father's hand. "Thank you for this," she began, then stopped. She looked around at the faces shining with surprise and admiration. "I wanted to remind everyone that I can make my own way," she continued. Her voice grew stronger. "I love you all, but I have chosen to build my own path. Today I came by helicopter because I wanted to show I can rise on my own, just like you taught me," she pointed to the sky, "and that I can touch new heights." A ripple of laughter and applause ran through the guests. Her father's shoulders straightened. He lifted her hand in the air like a champion's prize. His chest swelled with pride. The older partners who had doubted her exchanged glances and smiled. The children around the tent giggled at the sight of the helicopter so close. Maya's mother hugged her tightly. "You were amazing," she whispered. Her father reached for her other hand. "I am so proud of you," he said, voice thick. He turned to the guests. "Everyone, please welcome Maya, the bravest woman I know." He spoke loudly now, with confidence. "She is my daughter, and she deserves her place at this table." Guests cheered and rose to their feet. Plates tinkled as they clapped. The energy shifted from polite surprise to genuine celebration. Servers moved forward with trays of champagne flutes. One poured for Maya and her father. He raised his glass to her. "To Maya," he said. "To her courage and her future." Maya clinked her glass against his and took a small sip. The cool bubbles touched her lips, crisp and lively, much like the moment itself. The DJ slid into a new song as the sound of glasses faded. Laughter and conversation returned, louder and warmer than before. Guests leaned in to listen to Maya's voice. Some asked questions about her consultancy. Others complimented her dress. She smiled and answered each one, her confidence growing with every word. As the service resumed, her father guided her to the chair at his side. He moved the small wooden chair that had once stood under the tree and placed it next to his own. He patted it gently. Maya sat down, and his arm went around her shoulders. She rested her head against him for a moment, feeling the soft fabric of his suit against her cheek. Across the table, the man in the dark suit raised his glass and said, "Softly well done, Miss Thompson." She caught his eye and nodded. The woman beside him added, "You have our respect." Maya smiled and thanked them. She felt the warmth spread through her chest. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of stories, toasts, and laughter. Father told everyone about her successes. She told them about her first clients. They asked her about future plans. She spoke of new markets, small towns, and big dreams. Each word carried weight. People listened, intrigued and impressed. The sun dipped lower, casting a golden glow on the scene. When cake time came, the children lined up for slices. Maya helped serve, laughing as the frosting stuck to her fingers. Her father winked at her from his seat. She playfully flicked a bit of frosting at his nose. He pretended to glare, then laughed and wiped it off. Their laughter joined together, echoing under the tent. As the last guests stood to leave, they came by to offer hugs and words of congratulations. Many said they had never seen a birthday celebration like this. Maya thanked each one, feeling proud and happy. She looked up at her father, whose eyes shone in the late light. He squeezed her hand and nodded as if to say, "You belong here." When the lawn was quiet again and the tables were cleared, Maya and her parents walked toward the clearing. The helicopter sat waiting with its engines off. The pilot waved. Maya paused and looked back at the tent. It was empty now, save for a few chairs. She felt a gentle pull in her heart, a reminder that her life was a mix of old traditions and new adventures. She climbed into the helicopter again, her parents beside her for a moment. The pilot closed the door. Maya looked up at her father through the glass. He gave her a thumbs up. She smiled broadly. As the blades began to spin, she felt the same rush she had felt when she learned to ride a bike. The ground trembled beneath her, and then the world lifted away. She pressed her hand to the window. Below, the country club grew smaller. The long tent, the tables, the people all, faded beneath the green grass. Above her, the sky stretched wide and open. Maya leaned back in her seat and closed her eyes. She felt the hum of the engine in her bones. She felt the power of her choice. She felt the promise of her future. And she knew, with every fiber of her being, that she would keep rising on her own wings toward whatever came next. Maya felt the helicopter lift her gently away from the country club grounds. The thrum of the blades softened as they climbed higher, and the green fields beneath her grew smaller and smaller. She pressed her forehead against the cool glass window and watched the world fall away. Her heart was still racing from the applause and the looks of surprise, but she felt peaceful now. The sky was wide and open. She let herself smile at the thought of everything she had proved today. Beside her, her father sat in thoughtful silence. He wore a quiet smile, one that spoke of pride mixed with a hint of regret for how he had treated her earlier. Maya turned and met his gaze. She saw love shining in his eyes. She reached over and took his hand. "Thank you," she said softly, "for standing with me when it mattered." He squeezed her hand gently and nodded. "I should have done this sooner," he admitted in his low, steady voice. "I'm sorry. I let my old friend's doubts get in the way. Forgot you were your own person, with your own dreams." His words felt like warm sunlight on her skin. Maya felt tears well up, but she blinked them back. She did not need to cry here, not when she felt so strong. Outside the window, the city's skyline appeared on the horizon. Tall buildings glinted in the late afternoon sun. The pilot banked the helicopter smoothly, angling west toward the river that ran through town. Maya watched the water sparkle like diamonds. She remembered how, as a child, she and her father had spent lazy Sunday afternoons by that riverbank. He had taught her to skip stones, and she had laughed when the stones skipped only once. They had shared hot chocolate from a red thermos and talked about her dreams of travel and adventure. "I want to show you something," Maya said, turning back to her father. She reached behind her and pulled a small tablet from her bag. It was full of photos and plans for new offices, client meetings, and community workshops. She tapped the screen, and images of tight-knit cafes, bustling markets, and cheerful shop owners appeared. "This is where I want to go next. I want to help a bakery in that town, across the river." And here she swiped, "This coffee shop needs a new plan to reach more customers. I've already spoken to the owner." Her voice was bright with excitement. Her father studied the pictures. He leaned forward, his eyes attentive. "You've really thought this through," he said. "I can see you have a plan, and you believe in it." He paused. "I want to help you. If you'll let me, I'd like to introduce you to a few people I know in the city. They could be good partners." Maya's heart swelled. His offer meant more than any business deal. It was a bridge back to him. She smiled widely. "I'd like that very much," she said. The helicopter jostled slightly as it passed over a cluster of low hills. The pilot pointed out to the left. "There's the old airfield where you learned to fly," he said over the intercom. Maya recognized the small runway beside the river. The field looked quiet now, with only a few hangars standing like silent sentinels. She felt a pulse of nostalgia. She had dreamed of flying ever since she was little. watching birds wheel overhead. Today, she had done more than watch. She had soared. Her father leaned back, and for a moment, they sat in companionable silence. The city lights began to flicker on as dusk crept in. Maya felt the change in the air, the world shifting from day to night. She thought of how her life had changed today, too. She was no longer the daughter who sat alone. She was a partner, a leader, a woman carving her own path with her father by her side. When the helicopter touched down on the rooftop pad of Maya's apartment building, the city buzz wrapped around them. Cars honked faintly in the streets far below. Pedestrians moved like ants along the sidewalks. The pilot guided the craft gently to a hover before landing. Maya and her father stepped out onto the rooftop, where a small garden of potted plants and benches waited. The air smelled of concrete and evening breeze. Maya unlocked the rooftop door and led her father inside to the living room. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city skyline, now alive with lights. She switched on a few lamps, casting a warm glow. Over the modern furniture and the shelves full of books on business and travel, "Welcome home," she said, gesturing around. Her father looked around, surprised by the cozy feel. "This is nice," he said. "I didn't know you were so settled." Maya laughed. "I've been building my life here for months. It's my base of operations." She went to a small table and poured 2 glasses of orange juice. She handed 1 glass to her father. "2 new beginnings," she said, raising the glass. Her father tapped his glass against hers. "2 new beginnings," he repeated. They sipped, and the juice tasted sweet and fresh. Maya watched his face softening in. The light. She felt a warmth spread through her chest. She knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, she would face them with him in her corner. They settled on the couch, and Maya opened a laptop to show him her financial projections. She talked about growing her team, hiring assistants, and setting up workshops. She explained how she planned to run online seminars for business owners in remote towns. He asked questions, good questions that showed he was listening and that he cared. Maya answered with patience and detail, enjoying every minute. As night fell, they moved to the rooftop again and stood by the railing. The air was cool and the city lights shimmered below like a sea of stars. Maya leaned on the railing and her father joined her. They stood shoulder to shoulder, looking out. A plane passed overhead, its lights blinking. Maya's father sighed happily. "You know," he said, "I've always admired your spirit. I see now that your courage isn't reckless, it's careful. You plan, you learn, you grow." He turned to her. "I'm proud of you, Maya." She looked up at him, her eyes shining. "Thank you, Dad." "That means everything." They watched the plane disappear into the night, and the city noises hummed from below. Maya felt a sense of peace she had not known that afternoon. She had flown in a helicopter to make her point, but she had found something more important to her. Father's full support and love. She rested her head against his shoulder. Later, as they sat back inside, her father picked up a photograph from the shelf. It was a picture of Maya at her graduation, her cap tilted jauntily, her dad beside her, with a proud grin. He held the frame gently. "You were destined for great things," he said. "But I see now that the greatest thing you're doing is being yourself." Maya smiled at the photo. "I always wanted you to be proud of who I am, not just what I do," she said. He nodded, closing his eyes for a moment. The rest of the evening passed quietly. They talked about their plans for the next day, a meeting with potential partners, brunch at a small cafe Maya loved, and an afternoon walk by the river. When her father finally decided to leave, he hugged her tightly. "I'll see you tomorrow," he said. "Get some rest, and then we'll build from here." Maya watched him go down the elevator, then locked the door behind him. She felt a soft glow in her heart. She looked around her apartment, her books, her plans, her growing life. Fan felt a rush of gratitude. She had taken a risk and had shown her worth. She had sat alone under a marquee at her father's birthday, and she had risen into the sky. Now she sat here full of hope and promise. She moved to her desk and opened her notebook. She wrote 3 words at the top of a fresh page: believe, build, become. Then she added bullet points beneath. She planned her next steps: call her new client, draft the workshop outline, email her father's contacts. She paused and read her own words back. She felt a thrill. Maya closed the notebook and stepped to the window. The city lights twinkled. She took a deep breath and felt the night air fill her lungs. She felt both small and infinite at once. Tomorrow's sun would bring new challenges and new victories. But she knew she could face them all. She turned off the lights and climbed into bed. As she drifted toward sleep, she thought of the day's events: the empty table under the tree, the roar of the helicopter, her speech at the table, her father's proud tears. She felt a calm joy settle over her. She had proven her worth not through words alone, but through action and courage. And that courage would carry her forward. In her dreams, she soared above the clouds, free and unafraid. Would build on this moment. She would believe in herself, build her dreams, and become the person she was always meant to be. Maya woke to soft sunlight filtering through the curtains. She stretched and sat up in bed, listening to the quiet hum of the city outside. The events of the past day still felt like a dream. She smiled as she remembered her helicopter landing, and her father's proud tears. Now it was a new morning, full of promise. She slipped on a light robe and padded barefoot to the window. Below, the streets bustled with cars and people hurrying to work. Birds chirped in the rooftop garden. She shared with her neighbor. Maya closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Today she would meet the bakery owner across the river. She would taste fresh bread, listen to more stories, and offer her help. She felt a flutter of excitement. Downstairs in the kitchen, she prepared breakfast: oatmeal topped with fresh berries and a drizzle of honey. She poured a glass of orange juice and carried her meal to the small dining table. Her father would join her soon. He had promised to arrive early before meeting his contacts. In the city, Maya arranged the berries in neat circles and set the table with care. Even small mornings felt special now. A knock sounded at the door. Maya smiled and hurried to open it. Her father stood there, dressed in a casual shirt and jeans, a rare sight for him. He carried a stack of papers, contacts, notes, and invitations. He looked at her with warmth. "Good morning," he said, stepping inside. "I brought these, your future partner's details, and a map of the city." He handed her the papers. Maya's eyes lit up. "Thank you, Dad." She guided him to the table. She poured him coffee and watched him settle into his chair. They ate together, talking easily. He asked about her plans for the bakery. She described how she wanted to improve their menu, update their branding, and attract more customers. She talked about creating a simple website and offering baking classes on weekends. He listened intently, nodding with interest. "Sounds wonderful," he said. "I know the bakery owner. She's a dear friend of mine. I'll introduce you this afternoon." She felt thankful that he was using his connections to help her. No longer an outsider, she sat at his side as an equal partner. After breakfast, Maya dressed in a simple blouse and jeans, comfortable yet put together. She grabbed her satchel with her tablet and notes. Her father walked her to the elevator. He paused and placed a hand on her shoulder. "Remember," he said, "people trust you because you care. Show them that." Maya nodded, smiling. She felt confident. The elevator doors slid open, and they walked through the lobby to the rooftop helipad. The pilot was already there, waiting. The helicopter sat ready, its blades still. Maya climbed in first, then her father. She took the co-pilot's seat, her hands resting calmly on her lap. The pilot greeted them and lifted off smoothly. They rose, the city spread out beneath them. Maya pointed out landmarks: the river, the old airfield, and the country club where her father's party had been. Her father laughed and waved at the tiny marquee that now looked like a toy. Maya felt a rush of joy. From this height, life felt open and vast. The pilot banked left, heading toward the river crossing. Maya leaned forward to catch sight of the bakery. Below, they saw a cluster of low-rise buildings with red-tiled roofs. The bakery sat on a corner, its awning striped in warm yellow and brown. A few people waited in line under its sign. The helicopter landed on a nearby rooftop pad owned by her father's friend. Maya and her father stepped onto the rooftop terrace, where the morning breeze carried the smell of fresh bread drifting up from below. They followed a small path to a stairwell that led down to the street. Outside the bakery, the owner, Mrs. Alvarez, stood greeting customers. She was a warm woman with soft eyes and flour-dusted hands. When she saw Maya and her father, her face lit up. "Richard, and you must be Maya," she said, wrapping them both in a hug. "Welcome." She glanced at Maya's notes. "Ready to get to work?" Inside, the bakery hummed with activity. Ovens glowed and trays of golden croissants lined the counters. Maya and her father joined Mrs. Alvarez at a wooden table in the back. The baker and her small team gathered around. Maya introduced herself and explained her ideas: a new line of artisanal breads, a catching packaging, and an online ordering system. She showed them mock-ups on her tablets, simple, clean designs with warm colors. The team nodded and asked questions. Maya answered patiently, offering encouraging words. Her father watched proudly. He chimed in with suggestions: a special birthday cake menu, a loyalty card for customers, and partnerships with the coffee shop next door. Mrs. Alvarez smiled and squeezed his hand. "Your daughter's brilliant," she said. Maya felt a glow at the praise. They spent the next hour testing recipes. Maya and Mrs. Alvarez worked side by side, weighing flour, stirring dough, and tasting small pieces of warm bread fresh from the oven. Maya's eyes sparkled at the buttery flavor of croissants and the tangy crunch of sourdough. Mrs. Alvarez laughed when Maya's hands got covered in flour. They wiped their hands on aprons and continued, chatting like old friends. By noon, they had drafted a simple plan: new menu items, packaging samples, and a launch event in 2 weeks. Maya sent the plan to her office and scheduled meetings with designers and printers. Everything felt real and within reach. Her heart swelled with pride. As they prepared to leave, Mrs. Alvarez handed Maya a small loaf of bread wrapped in brown paper. "For you," she said, "to remember today." Maya tucked it into her bag with a grateful smile. Her father gave Mrs. Alvarez a warm hug. "Thank you for letting me help," he said. "And thank you for trusting Maya." Mrs. Alvarez nodded. "She's a special one." Back on the rooftop pad, Maya and her father boarded the helicopter again. As they rose, Maya looked down at the bakery, imagining busy mornings filled with the smell of fresh bread. She thought of the new website, the baking classes, and the happy customers. She felt that spark of purpose she had first felt when she started her consultancy. Now, that spark flared into a bright flame. When the helicopter landed at her building, Maya's phone buzzed with messages, her assistant confirming the bakery plan and new emails from potential clients. She closed her tablet and smiled. Her life was busy and full, but full in the best way possible. Throughout the afternoon, Maya turned her attention to other tasks: drafting workshop outlines, preparing marketing materials, and checking her financial projections. Her father joined her in the rooftop garden, where they met with the city council. Member about hosting a small business seminar. They spoke about community support and classes for young entrepreneurs. Maya listened and took notes, then offered ideas for managing time and resources. The council member nodded, impressed. 4 o'clock, her father took his leave. He hugged Maya and said, "I'm proud of you every day. But today I'm proud knowing I can stand beside you." Maya hugged him back tightly. "Thank you, Dad," she whispered. He stepped into the elevator, giving her a final wave as the doors closed. Maya watched him go, then turned back to her work. The rooftop lights flickered on as dusk settled. She felt a deep sense of contentment. She had started this journey alone, but now she had her father's support and a community ready to grow with her. Her consultancy was more than a business. It was a way to lift others up. That evening, she stepped outside to the rooftop terrace. The city lights shimmered, and the air was warm. She took the loaf of bread from her bag and tore off a piece. She closed her eyes and savored the fresh taste. She thought of Mrs. Alvarez and the team in the bakery, of the families who would taste their bread for the first time. To something bigger than herself. Maya pulled out her notebook and wrote a note at the top of a new page. Help others rise. She added bullet points. Share knowledge, listen with care, use my skills to serve. She paused and looked up at the stars beginning to appear above the skyline. She felt small and powerful at once. Turning off her lights, Maya walked back inside. She prepared for bed, brushing her teeth and changing into comfortable clothes. As she climbed under the covers, she thought of the day's achievements and tomorrow's possibilities. She smiled in the dark. In the quiet of the night, she drifted off, dreaming not of helicopters or parties, but of hands joined in partnership, of communities thriving, and of her own heart open wide. She knew the journey would have challenges, but she was ready. She had the courage to soar and the wisdom to land gently, lifting others with her. And that was the greatest gift of all.